We're going to talk about the order of operations. Before we dive into that, let's refresh our memory on when an expression is undefined. Remember, when we have 0 divided by 5, we can get our answer of 0. But when we have 5 divided by 0, or any number divided by 0, that's when we get an undefined answer. Now, when we're dealing with the order of operations, we're going to be looking at problems that have multiple operations, so addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all in one problem. And we need to make sure that we do them in the same order, following this order of operations, so that everyone who does the problem gets the same answer. The order of operations is normally remembered with the acronym PEMDAS, PEMDAS, or the acronym Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, to remember those letters. The P stands for parentheses and any other grouping symbols, so sometimes you'll see brackets as well. And the P for parentheses tells us to do the operations inside of the parentheses. So you have to be careful. Sometimes you'll see parentheses just as part of multiplication. We won't do them in this step. We'll only do things inside the parentheses. E stands for exponents. So that's anything like 3 squared, where we have that small number up top. That's our exponent. M and D go together. They're multiplication and division, and we go left to right in the problem. So if we had something like 3 times 2 divided by 4, in this problem, we would do the multiplication first. But if we had an example that looked like 3 divided by 2 times 4, we would do division first in this problem. Whichever one comes first in the problem in that multiplication and division step gets done first. And it's the same thing in this next step, addition and subtraction. We also go left to right in the problem. So if we had something like 3 plus 2 minus 4, in this problem, we would do our addition first. But if we had 3 minus 2 plus 4, we would do the subtraction first. So let's look at an example. If we have 4 divided by 2 times 6, remember, we're going to follow the order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I'm going to put arrows underneath the multiplication and division and addition and subtraction steps to remind myself that I need to go left to right in the problem. So the P stands for parentheses. There are no parentheses. The E stands for exponents. There are no exponents. The M and D stands for multiplication and division, and this problem does have both of them. So I need to go left to right in the problem. Division happens first, so I'm going to do 4 divided by 2. That gives me 2. Then I need to bring down the times 6. Now I'm going to keep going and do that multiplication. 2 times 6 gives me 12 as my final answer. Now you may have noticed on the right-hand side of the screen we have the same exact problem. So I'm going to do this problem incorrectly so that you can see why the order of operations is important. If I dealt with this, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS, for my order of operations, and forgot and did my multiplication first, I'd be saying that I was doing my 2 times 6 first, which would give me 12, and I would bring down that 4 divided by. And when I do 4 divided by 12, I'm going to end up with the fraction 1/3, or if you plug it in your calculator, you might end up with 0.3 repeating. Right? We get different answers. That's why it's important that we follow the order of operations so that we get the same answer no matter who's doing the problem. So remember, multiplication and division have to go left to right in the problem. Let's look at another example. We have parentheses, 11 plus 5 squared, close those parentheses, divided by 2 times 3. So I'm going to start out with my order of operations, PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Now the P stands for parentheses, and we have parentheses here. So inside those parentheses, we have two operations, addition and exponents. So if I look, exponents come before addition. So inside those parentheses, I'm going to do the exponents first. 5 squared gives me 25. Remember, 5 squared is really telling me to do 5, that base number, times itself twice. Now I'm going to bring everything else down. And I need to continue working inside those parentheses. So now I'm going to do that addition. 11 plus 25 gives me 36. Now I'm done everything inside the parentheses, and those parentheses are not also serving as a symbol for multiplication, so I can drop them because they no longer have any use. Now I need to keep going. I finished my parentheses step. Up next is exponents. I already dealt with the exponents in the problem. Now I have multiplication and division, and I need to go left to right in the problem. So in the problem, division happens first. 36 divided by 2 gives me 18. Then I need to bring down that times 3. 18 times 3 gives me 54. That's my final answer. Let's look at another example. We have 5 plus 3 times 4 squared divided by 2 to the third power minus parentheses 5 times 2. So I still need to follow my order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I work inside the parentheses first. So inside the parentheses, I have 5 times 2, which gives me 10. And I'm done that step. So I'm going to bring everything else down. Now I need to deal with exponents. There are 2 exponents, 4 squared, which I know I'm thinking 4 times 4, which is going to give me 16, and 2 to the third power, or 2 cubed. That's telling me to multiply 2 by itself 3 times. 2 times 2 gives me 4, times 2 again gives me 8. Then I have to bring everything else down. Okay, I'm going to move that 5 plus 3 further down so we can see it better. Okay, now I need to keep going with the problem. The next step is multiplication and division, left to right in the problem. This time multiplication occurs first in the problem. That 3 times 16 gives me 48. I want to bring everything else down so I don't forget about it. But I'm still in that multiplication and division step because there's still division left. So I need to do that 48 divided by 8, which gives me 6. I continue bringing everything else down that I haven't dealt with yet. But I'm done my multiplication and division step. There's no multiplication and division left. There is addition and subtraction left. So I'm going to do my addition and subtraction left to right in the problem. If I do that addition first, 5 plus 6 gives me 11. I need to bring down that minus 10. And when I do 11 minus 10, that gives me 1 for my final answer. Let's look at another problem. We have 7 and then brackets 5 minus 8, parentheses, 2 minus 9, and then close those brackets. So if we think about our order of operations, we have please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Remember, our parentheses dealt with any grouping symbols. So in this case, we have two sets of grouping symbols. We have these brackets, and then we also have these parentheses. So when we have two sets of grouping symbols, we work from the inside out. Another way to phrase that is that we're going to deal with the innermost set of parentheses first. So that 2 minus 9 is in the parentheses that are inside the brackets. So we're going to deal with that first. 2 minus 9 gives us negative 7. Then I'm going to bring everything else down. Now notice I have this 5 minus 8, and then it's those parentheses, 2 minus 9. I have to keep those parentheses there, because in this case, those parentheses are serving two purposes. They're telling me that I need to do the 2 minus 9 first, but they're also telling me right here that it's 8 times that entire thing. Remember, parentheses can also be a symbol for multiplication. So I've completed everything inside that first set of parentheses. Now I need to deal with everything inside that bracket. So inside the set of brackets, I have subtraction with the 5 minus 8, and I also have multiplication with the 8 times negative 7. I know that multiplication is in my step before subtraction. So I'm going to do that multiplication first. When I do that multiplication, I'm going to keep that subtraction sign attached to that 8. So remember, a subtraction sign and a negative sign can be used interchangeably. So negative 8 times negative 7 gives me positive 56. So I'm going to write plus 56. Then I'm going to bring down everything else from the problem. I need to continue working inside those brackets, so I'm going to add 5 and 56 to give me 61. Now, just like before, those brackets have to stay there because they're serving a second purpose. They were there to group those operations together, but they're also there to tell me that they're multiplication. So I really have 7 times 61 as my last step. So when I do 7 times 61, that gives me 427 for my final answer. Let's look at one more order of operations problem that has a fraction in it. So we have 3 cubed minus 5 times the quantity 2 minus 4 plus 1, all divided by 6 minus 4 times 2. So we're still going to deal with that order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. But when we have a fraction, we're essentially doing two order of operations problems. We're going to do everything up in the numerator, the top part of the fraction first, following the order of operations. Then we're going to do everything in the denominator, following the order of operations. Then last but not least, we'll divide. So if I look at this numerator first, I do have a set of parentheses right here. So I'm going to work inside those parentheses first. I'm going to bring down everything I'm not dealing with. So I have 3 to the third minus 5. Now I need to work inside those parentheses. I know 2 minus 4 gives me negative 2. And then I'm going to close those parentheses and add 1. Notice I left those parentheses there because they're telling me that there's multiplication going on in this problem as well. Now I'm going to keep focusing on that numerator. Up next comes exponents for my order of operations. And I do have an exponent, that 3 to the third. I know 3 to the third is really telling me to do 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 gives me 9. Times 3 again gives me 27. And I'm going to bring down everything else. Now I need to keep going with my numerator. I have subtraction, I have multiplication, and I have addition. I know from my order of operations, multiplication comes before any addition or subtraction. So I'm going to bring down that 27. I know negative 5 times negative 2 gives me positive 10. So I'll write plus 10. And then I need to bring down that plus 1. Now I have addition left. So when I add 27 plus 10 gives me 38. I apologize. Well, plus the 1 gives me the 38. So I have my numerator completely simplified. Now I need to go through and do the same process for my denominator, the bottom part of that fraction. So if I look at 6 minus 4 times 2, I have subtraction and I have multiplication. I need to do that multiplication first. So I'm going to bring down that 6, and then I know negative 4 times 2 gives me negative 8. So I have 6 minus 8. Now all I have left is that subtraction. So I bring that subtraction down. 6 minus 8 gives me 2. I simplify it. I end up with negative 2. I'm going to drag that negative 2 over. I have 38 over negative 2. I know that fraction bar really means division. So I'm going to do 38 divided by negative 2. That gives me negative 19.